So does that kind of raise your game a little bit when you're working with, I mean, because you're working with actors who are just kind of there collecting a paycheck, you come in, you do your thing. Not to say that, of course, not doing your job as a professional, but when you see that other people are so passionate, I mean, it's like you working with a crew that everybody's involved in it. I mean, did that kind of, well, of course, I'm working with Gene Hackman, I'm sure that kind of makes you raise your game a little bit. But I mean, did you were able to experience that from Chris? You were able to feel his dedication and really...
Absolutely, and especially when we're doing that, the fight on the moon, because he covered it from every angle. He wanted to really put his stamp on it, and I felt like from the moment we arrived in the morning till we walked out at the dark of night, he was totally committed to. You didn't see him going, leaving to go take a phone call or whatever. He was there behind the camera, looking through the lens. What are we getting here? How are we going to cut this? I mean, he was very much involved.
So yeah, and you did go on to do other directing and stuff after Superman 4. But a lot of times you'll get people who, because they've been on a show for a long time, or it's part of their contract. It's like, you know, William Shatner getting to direct Star Trek 5 because Leonard Nimoy got to direct Star Trek 4. You know, sometimes it just kind of isn't organic. Well, we kind of got it. It's a gimme. But with the direction that Chris was doing on the scenes that he worked on, you really could tell that it was something that was important to him, right? Very much. Very, very focused, very committed. He had built that character in many ways, Christopher as Superman, so he very much wanted to keep a level, a standard that you were used to seeing since he was a young man doing the first one. And the character of Superboy as well. I mean, he was actually, because Jordan was not a young fellow when he was doing the show. I mean, he looked great, of course. I mean, but was there ever any talk during the course of the show where they maybe wanted to try to bump him up into a Superman sort of thing, or was it just going to be Superboy?
I really don't know how to answer that. I don't know if they I mean, I think eventually, yeah, they wanted to bring it into Superman, but...
Were there talks of, because at the time when the Chris Reeve films were going away, was there any talks that you ever heard of doing any sort of transition to film, taking these characters and putting them up there?
No. No. I wish they would have, you know, but yeah, no, they went right into Lois and Clark afterwards, so, yeah.
Okay, any questions out here? Neil? He doesn't need a microphone, he's got a big mouth. Go ahead,
Got one from Mark. You mentioned Gene a couple of times. When you actually signed on to the project, was it known already at that time that Gene's voice would be your voice, and why exactly they chose to go that direction?
No, I had no idea. It was to this day, I'm not sure why they made that decision. I think my voice probably would have been adequate for the part Nuclear Man. And the decision, the choices they made, they decided to loop Gene's voice first, and then on the set, in front of the camera, I lip sync to it. So at times, I'm sure when you see the wooden look on my face, a lot of it is because it's a countdown, 3, 2, 1, ah, rah, 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 you know, kind of thing. Instead of the other way around, which you normally do, use your voice if they're not happy with it. But again, I don't question any of these things. This is the direction you want to go, this is what you want to do, fine, whatever you want to do, I'm game for it. But for the reasoning, I'm afraid I don't know. I'd love to ask Sidney Fury that question someday.
So doing the effects stuff, because we do want to kind of cover that a little bit as well. The way that things ended up coming across on the screen because of the budget getting cut like that. But you can tell that the elements, the thinking behind it, the way that it was storyboarded out, I'm sure, and everything, there were really some good ideas, there were some really good concepts that we hadn't seen before in a Superman film. So when you were shooting it, would you, and being familiar with the earlier films, did you kind of say, hey, this is pretty cool? I mean, this is stuff that's really kind of,
Yes, the time. And then you keep envisioning what it's going to look like when everything's been added. You remove the wires, and you know, how are things going to look against, when we filmed against a blue screen, I use green now. But yeah, it was certainly got to do a lot of exciting things and had to learn along the way. And I thank goodness for Christopher and a great flying crew. The crew that flew us had been with him for the whole series, and they helped you to be better than you might have been because of their expertise with it.
That was one thing I was always sad about. I never got to fly. I always wanted to fly. I'm like, come on, can't you just take me for a spin? Really? Just one time around? But I never got the opportunity. But I watched him do it a lot.
And you still wanted to do it after
I still wanted to do it. Yes, I did.
Okay, we're going to jump into the front row here. And then we'll get to you next, sir. Promise.
This is really a question for Mark, but personally, Tracy, don't feel bad. It took Tom Welling 10 years to figure out how to fly.
Yeah.
Mark, I'm told that the concept for Superman 4 began when someone actually asked Chris, why doesn't Superman just go and solve the world's problems? And that was the nucleus out of which that movie grew.
Yes.
And yet, and as I recall, in that film, it actually turned out pretty well, even though there were some bumps along the way. And yet the Superman comic books right now are kind of dealing with the same subject, but in reverse, that, you know, he's been advised all along not to directly interfere with human affairs, and even when he does it in a small way. He showed up and just appeared at one of these freedom rallies in Iraq, I think it was. It leads to an international incident. Governments are drawing all kinds of conclusions, and it leads to him threatening to renounce his U.S. citizenship so that he won't be tied to any one area or government. So even just appearing leads to problems. In light of this, do you think people might look back on your movie with a slightly deeper feeling, firstly, and secondly, what is your opinion? Should Superman get involved in public affairs directly, or should he not?
That's a good question.
Wow.
No pressure.
No.
They were softball.
Yeah. Wasn't he was also told not to change history or to affect history, and oh wow, if you had somebody that was capable, I think we're gonna have to muddle through this on our own. I think we're gonna have to. It's gonna get probably a bit more difficult before it gets better, and I think he'd probably sit back and say, "You're gonna have. It's gonna have to get hard, and then you'll come out the other side enlightened." I think that's what Superman would say.
Okay, and I told you I was going to let you... Okay, right over here.
This question is for either of you or both of you. You guys, you've been affected by the shows that you've participated in. And do you have any Superman or Kryptonian keepsakes that you've kept with you since your time on the show or the movie?
I have nothing. I gave away those great jackets, great production jackets, but I gave them to friends and family. And when I go to visit my brother, he's a doctor in Austin, he's still got his hanging in the closet. But unfortunately, he's a lot skinnier than me, so it doesn't fit. And if I didn't put it on, it wouldn't look good.
I did actually, this was another great thing about the show, is they allowed us to, what they did really was, after we wrapped a season, they would have an auction for the public. And they would auction off a lot of the clothes and memorabilia from the shows. But the cast and crew always got first dibs. So I did keep the one outfit from Darla Goes Ballistic. I kept the outfit and I bought it with me. And I'm actually donating it to the museum. So I'll be giving it to Jim. And they asked me, they said, well, you know, can you still wear it? And I said, well, I actually had a Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants moment. I put it on and it did fit. So I was like, so yeah, you'll be seeing it. I'm not sure exactly when they're going to put it in the museum, but I will be donating that. So, but that was the one thing I did get to keep. So, and the memories.